Now to you, Fraser. You did quite a number of placements, I think, while you were on the course. Can you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, so the first ever placement that I undertook was at the Royal Overseas League, and that was arranged directly through university. So I moved to London from Scotland, and tutors at the university very kindly arranged that for me, and I was engaged there in sort of administrative tasks and basic running of the office activities. And then that led directly, through a contact that I made there, that led directly on to a series of work placements at the Association of British Orchestras. I did a placement there of a couple of months, which then turned into a couple of months additionally, which were paid. And following on from that, I also made another contact, and I was able to secure a placement at Universal Music Group, and there that was also paid.
Okay.
So those were the main placements that I did whilst I was at university.
Some students complain about the difficulties of managing university work, placement work, and a part-time paid job, because most students have to work nowadays. How did you manage those three different areas?
I think I completely agree, and it is very, very difficult. What I was able to do was, in the first year, I devoted my work activities solely to a work placement which was unpaid. It was lucky for me that then that turned into paid opportunities as a result of the work that I had done in that first placement. And if you're able to do that, that's the ideal situation.
Yes, of course.
And I acknowledge that that's not always going to be possible, but if you're able to do that, then that's the best scenario, I would say.
Right, okay. And how did you find the transition from placement to employment?
I think the first placement that I ever undertook taught me a lot about a working environment. I had already worked in workplaces before I came to university, so I knew about that. But I think every industry has its own makeup, has its own ways of working. And I think what you've got to do is in your very first placement, just take as much as you can from that, involve yourself as much as you can. And actually one of the most valuable things for me is, obviously, what I found was not just doing tasks, but just being in the workplace environment. So you can watch things, you can pick up how other people work, and if you're able to sort of soak up all that information, it means that you can sort of repeat that when you go into your next placement, and that helps that transition, I think, if you're able to be aware of that.
Well, it clearly put you in very good stead, because, as I say, you managed to secure a job, a full-time job before graduation, and you were balancing academic work and working as well. What's a typical day for you here at the Donmar now? Does such a thing exist? Is there a typical day?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's certain things that always stay the same in a day. So, you know, working in the development department, it's about raising money, so obviously we have members, so there's memberships that needs to be processed. We have donors that book very special seats through us, so that has to be done every day. But then the rest of the job is stuff that changes every day, really. So it's all about donor care, so we have events that happen at the theatre very, very regularly, so as Cashman alluded to. So it's about arranging those events, it's about making sure that they're engaging, interesting. So that's probably the most interesting part of the job. It's dreaming up these events and also organising them and making sure that they go well. And those happen for us on a very regular basis, and all the team are involved, including me. So that's the biggest element of the job that changes regularly.
And as I asked Catherine, are there specific skills that you could point to that you feel that you developed during your placement activity that you've carried into your job?
Yeah, I certainly think so. In addition, I would also say skills that I learned at university. So, for example, accountancy skills. That then, I mean, that's not often something that someone who'd done a BA in art history or whatever would know. But coming from an arts management discipline, you do have a bit of knowledge of that. So if you make people aware of that when you go into a placement situation, you can do a bit of work on finance, and that really does help. You can develop that in a workplace situation. And the job that I do now, I basically do most of the finance for our department. So that's an example of something you learn that's goes through that. Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. What would you say to those critics who say that placement activity is slave labour, because often placement activity is unpaid, of course?
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think it will be very, very difficult for someone to go from a purely academic-based learning to a vocational job. So to go from school through to university without any knowledge of not a service sector job, but an office-based job or an arts-based job, to have no knowledge of that, and then to go into often arts organisations quite small staffs, and you've got quite a lot of range of tasks that you have to do. I think that's a very difficult thing for someone to take on board, to do effectively. So there needs to be a transitional period between the two, I think. And I take the point about them being unpaid, and I understand that. But what I would say is, if you're able to do it whilst you're at university, then that's a huge benefit, because you have money coming in from other sources then. And it's not, you're not found in a situation where you graduate, and you have no student loan, and you have to do a full year of placement. I was able to get it around that way, because I couldn't have done that. And there's no way I would have to have moved home. I couldn't have stayed in London unpaid for a year. You have to have a lot of money.
I mean, it's key to the course that the placement is a unit, so all students have to undertake it while they're at university, rather than being a top-up or something that they do in the summer holidays.
And I think that's a great thing, and also an unusual thing, because most people that don't do such a course and do want to, undertake a career in arts management, find that they have no real relevant work experience. And it means they have to do it when they finish, and that's the only time. But I had already done it, so I didn't need to.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was why I was lucky in that.
Well, you're engaged in supervising Catherine now on her placement. How have you found this experience, given that you're such a recent graduate yourself?
Actually, when I first started, obviously she'd been there a lot longer than I had.
So she was supervising you?
Well, exactly. So there was lots of things that she knew that, in fact, I didn't know. So that was great to have her. And actually, the other people in my department that do my job, don't really know what actually, day in, day out is done. So it was really, really valuable having her there to show me what to do actually at the beginning. And then now, she's very, very, she knows what she's doing already. She works automatically and she anticipates things, which is also very, very nice. And I think she certainly really, really has learned, if in fact she hadn't worked in an arts environment before Donmar, then she certainly must have picked up skills over that time when she was there, definitely. Even, the people that we deal with, very high level donors, Catherine speaks to them on the phone, and that can be quite a daunting task.
Yes.
Can be, when I first started, if you're speaking to, a very famous name, for example.
Yes.
Suddenly your heart, you think, how do I engage with this person? But she does it superbly. And it's good to have that reassurance that someone will be able to do that.
Yes, great. And not thinking about Catherine specifically, right, because we don't want to get personal, what do you think the qualities are of a good work placement student?
I think you have to be conscientious. It's important to be conscientious in what you do. I think.
And how would you unpick that?
Okay, so I think you've got to show part of that conscientiousess is about showing initiative.
Yes.
So if you're in a workplace, you get given a task. If you see a better way of doing something, or if you can anticipate the next step, or if you can show a bit of initiative in what you do, that will really stand you in really very good stead.
Yes.
Not to clock watch.
Yes.
I think if something needs to be done, even though you're working for free, that's just part of working in the arts. It's part of working late nights. We all have to do it. And I think, whilst people may have misgivings about that, I think that's an important thing to do. And also, what you have to do is, I worked in classical music environments, and then now I work in a theatre environment, and it's very, very different. So the office environment, the type of people that work in both are completely different types of people. So I think the important thing to do is, when you go into an environment, is to think about the people in that environment, how you can sort of mould yourself professionally to fit in that environment. Because every environment's different. You can't go in just as yourself. You have to go in as a professional and be able to make a distinction between those two types of persons, your own self and your professional self. And you have to be aware to mould that to your workplace. I'm certainly different in this situation than I was, for example, working at the Association of British Orchestras or universities.
And finally, what advice would you give to current students considering placement activity?
I think it's probably the most important aspect of your degree. The academic elements are very important, and academic elements are a prod to make you do your own reading, and that's something but the academic element was something that you could, to a certain extent, teach yourself or be taught. But the workplace skills that you learn, that's what got me the job that I have. And actually, when you're doing a BA in Arts Management over a BA in English, it's a vocational degree that you're undertaking. Obviously, it has an underpinning in academic disciplines, and you have to be able to write well, and you have to be able to understand policy frameworks and things that underpin, what you do as a professional. But the workplace skills, the skills that you use day in, day out, are what got me the job. I still remember my interview when I was asked, as a recent graduate, what work activities I had undertaken, and I think they were quite surprised to find out the range of things that I'd done, and I'm sure that's one of the main reasons why I got the position that I have now.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.